Okay, one of the strategies you're learning in this program is how to invest in private businesses. You're going to be approached by your friend who has a startup they're doing. And I'm not even talking about if you're a professional investor, angel or VC investor. I'm just saying, you're always going to have a friend. You're always going to have a friend of a friend who wants to pitch you they bring slideshow over their PowerPoint. This is why you should invest in me. And so sometimes that's very good. There was a kid that approached 4 people and he had a private business. He was in school and he said, invest, I forget what the amount was, 10 or 20 grand, and I'll give you a percentage of the business. And 2 of them said yes and 2 of them said no, and that guy was Mark Zuckerberg. And the 2 people who said yes that invested in Facebook are multi-billionaires and basically have never had to work a day in their life. And the 2 that said no, well, they regret it. So sometimes investing in private businesses, a friend's business, and we're talking today about passive investment. We're not talking about you investing in your own business that you're actively operating with by yourself or with a partner. So there's always 2 types of investments. There's passive and there's active, right? So today we're talking about passively investing in other people's business where you do very little work and they do all the work. So what do you need to look for? And the first thing I want to talk about, I always like to start, how when you ask people, do you want the good news or the bad news? Today's lesson is going to be about the bad news, the pitfalls, the dangers, how easy it is for you to lose a lot of money. So here's the key thing when you're investing in other people. Number 1, just going to give you a series of things. Private businesses, meaning smaller companies that your friends started, they're running out of their house or a small office. One of the dangers is they're harder to sell your shares. So let's say you put in 100 grand and you get 10% of the company. Well, if you ever want to get your money back, there's not a lot of people ready to buy that 10% from you. So we call that they're illiquid businesses. Okay? Liquid. There's a liquidity danger that you might need your 100 grand back, and who the heck's going to buy the company? If the company's doing poorly, no one exists. Even if it's doing well, other people might not believe in your friend like you do. So you got to go into it pretty much knowing if you write them a check for 100 grand or 10 grand or $1 million, you're not going to see it for probably 5 to 10 years. As long as you're okay with that, then it's okay to invest. But a lot of people, dangerous pitfall, they put it in and their friends like, dude, I'm going to, this company will sell it in 2 years and you'll get all your money back tenfold. Rarely happens. Most businesses fail. Let's just face it. So number 2, you have literally what's called business risk. And we know that business risk is huge. For new companies, about 80% of them fail within 5 years. So you got liquidity risk because they're illiquid. You have business risk because, let's face it, either the idea is stupid or the manager, your friend, your buddy, the person the friend of a friend, isn't as good as they initially showed you in their PowerPoint. A lot of people show you a PowerPoint. Look, here's the marketplace. There's this one funny Ollie G video where he goes in and pitches to venture capitalists an ice cream glove idea. And he has a board and he's like, here's how much money we're going to make. You take the total number of people with hands in the world, 7 billion, and you multiply the total amount of people who like ice cream, which is 3 billion, and you multiply it for $18 the glove, and it's like, we're going to make $6 trillion. And it's funny. If you watch that funny video, one of the VCs goes, this is the worst idea I've ever heard. But his business partner goes, no, I see it. He didn't know it was a joke video. And he's like, no, I kind of see it. I kind of see why people would wear an ice cream glove to prevent ice cream from dripping on your hand. So that VC, I don't know how he's possibly in business, but you and I sometimes are that VC where somebody has a dumb idea and we just don't see it. So just understand, 80% of these private businesses are going to fail. And then you have something which is really, I just call a human risk, meaning this person that's going to run the business, they get hit by a car. They get disabled, they die, they cheat and run off with the money that you put. There's a human risk element that's very large, because new businesses are pretty much predicated on the skill
and health of one or two people, if it's one or two business partners. And so you got to go into, so you might want to now all of these can be protected against somewhat, and we'll talk about that. But the human side of the risk, you can prevent by having a life insurance policy, by doing a criminal background check. So let's go through these and kind of cover how to protect yourself, because as you make money, you're going to be tempted, trust me, to invest in someone's private business that they say is going to go big. I get probably asked 10 to 30 times a day, So you don't have to be a Shark Tank person. The second you start having money to reinvest, people are going to approach you. So let's go through these. Let's start with number one. What do you do? The liquidity risk. How do you protect yourself? This one's kind of easy. I mean, number one, don't put money in that you need anytime soon. Okay? Number two, this is a little more sophisticated. Invest in companies that have companies with lots in industries with lots of buyers. So one thing I like about, let's say, MentorBox is a company that I invested in. I'm somewhat active, not very active, but it's a hybrid between passive and active investing. And the reason I like MentorBox is, who could buy that company? What big company could acquire MentorBox? Well, it's a book shipping company, kind of like the Netflix of books. Okay, so you got, maybe Barnes & Noble would buy it, maybe Amazon would buy it, maybe Walmart would buy it, maybe there's a company in, I forget the name of it, in England, it's a big bookstore. Maybe Penguin Publishers, maybe, so and these are multi-billion-dollar companies, maybe one of the big publishers would buy it. So you see, I can name like 5 or 10 companies with $1 billion at their disposal that could buy the MentorBox private company. So that's a good example where I'm protecting against liquidity risk by being in an industry with a lot of buyers. So if you invest in your friend's business where he is going to be a realtor, and he's like, dude, I'm going to build a big real estate agency and I'll give you 20% of my profit. It's not the greatest example, but let's just say. Or I've got a pizza store, for example. And I got one store in Hollywood and I want you to invest 50 grand into it and I'll give you 20% of the company or something like that. Well, the problem is, how many big buyers exist to buy a little pizza store? Now, if there was a pizza franchise that they started, it's a scalable business. So you want to look at scalable potential businesses. If your friend's going to make one pizza store and then he's going to just try to get a lot of sales in one store, it's not scalable. It can't grow. Patrick Schwarzenegger, acquaintance of mine, not a close friend, but it's Arnold Schwarzenegger's son. And I was talking to him. He's only like 20 or 21, and he's invested in this pizza franchise. He's an investor. LeBron James is an investor, and I just saw a report that the company's valued at about $400 million. Why? Because the business model's scalable. Like, you got pizza stores, they've got them in New York and in Chicago, and the whole business is built how to open many, 300, 400, 500 stores. So if you had invested in that early and you wanted to get out, that's liquidity, is cashing in, you would be more likely able to, because a lot of people are interested in that. Wow, they haven't gone public yet. No big Domino's or Pizza Hut has tried to buy them out yet, but there's lots of individuals seeing this company in the news, knowing it's a scalable business. Right now it's worth $400 million. It might be worth $4 billion. And so you could probably get somebody to buy your shares even before a big company bought it out. So this is very important that you do these. There's 3 steps. Don't put money in you need anytime soon. In fact, it's going to usually count on 10 years to see any of your money back. Invest in companies. Now, it might be faster, but just prepare for the worst. Invest in companies in industries with lots of buyers, with big pockets. We'll call it billion-dollar buyers. So don't invest in something that no one wants to buy it except your friend's aunt or something like that.
And then invest in businesses that are in a type of industry that could be franchised, could be licensed, could be duplicated, replicated, and scaled out. Don't invest in somebody who's thinking too small, okay? Because even if they do big things in a small market, it's not big enough to give you liquidity very easily. Okay, so the next thing we'll talk about, what was number 2 that I just, so going back here, let's talk about business risk. So how do you protect against this? Okay, so business risk, this is a very important part. Okay, so you got business risk. Business risk. Okay, number 1, focus on people, not business plans. When somebody presents their business plan to you, pretty much ignore it. It's pointless. They're not going to write a business plan that makes them look bad. It's kind of like reading a dating profile and really taking it seriously. First of all, people always put themselves as skinnier than they are, taller than they are. They put a picture of themselves that's the best version. You only really know, if you on Match.com or Tinder, who you're really going to date by going out on a date with them, right? You got to have some experience. You can't just say, oh, I'll marry you based off your profile. Many men and many women have learned the hard way that you can't look at just written out plans of what somebody's going to be like, okay? You have to focus on meeting them and knowing them. So you could say knowing the people that are going to run the business. So if your friend comes to you or a friend of a friend comes to you and says, oh, I got the greatest thing, you invest, it's an app, it's going to replace Uber, and da-da-da-da-da. And here's my business plan. It's going to be just like the Ali G one. Here's how big the market is. How many people have cars in America? Okay, 300 million cars in America. And we could get 10% of them. That's, 30 million people on our app, and each of them pay us $100 a month. And look at that, we're making hundreds of millions of dollars a month within 18 months. I mean, this is how people's business plans are. So I pretty much go, just think of it this way. If Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, or Elon Musk came up to you and said, I'm launching a new business, invest $10,000 into it, and I'll give you 10%. I would just say, sure, here's the check. And if they go, don't you want to know the business ideas? Nah, because I know if I get 10% of it, that means you own 90%, Bill Gates or Elon or Jeff Bezos. And I know you want to succeed in life, and I know you're a winner. Winners want to keep winning. Even if this first idea doesn't work, you'll pivot and keep this business making money. Just like Instagram started out as a little app for address, phone numbers, and Kevin Systrom, the manager, the person running Instagram, is smart, and he switched it over to a photo app. So if Bill Gates came to you, wouldn't you just invest? Or would you be like, well, Bill, send me an elaborate business plan that makes you look amazing? No, you invest in people. Number 1 way to invest in businesses and not incur massive business risk. Know the person, focus on the person. So you might want to do, and I recommend you do background check. Now, I'm not just talking about a criminal one. You probably want to do that. Make sure they're not likely to steal the money from you that you give them, okay? If they got a criminal background check of money laundering, spent 10 years in you may in jail for money laundering, you may not want to invest in them. But beyond a criminal background check, I just like to look, it's like track record. Now, sometimes you'll be investing in people who haven't really done this type of business, but winners win. And it's been proven scientifically that you have dopamine receptors in your brain. The more you win, the more your brain grows new dopamine receptors, makes you more ambitious, more optimistic, more hardworking. So if you're dealing with somebody who's, let's say, 20 years old, you want to take a little more risk, invest in someone very young like Mark Zuckerberg was, but you want to look like what did he do in high school? Not just grades, because grades can be tricked, but if he played on the basketball team, was he a leader on the team, or she a leader on the team? Look for hints, even back through our childhood. They say Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, you could tell there's something special about him at 5 years old, under 5. Warren Buffett was reading investing books at 7. Bill Gates was tinkering with the beginning of computer and computer code at age 12. So if he's 18 saying invest in my new company called Microsoft, you could just do a little sniffing around, ask his parents, ask to go out to dinner with them, say invite your friends, invite your family. I want to invest in you, but I need to understand you. And if somebody gets pissed off about that, it's not a good investment. It's too much risk. Okay? So really look at their track record in life. Meet their friends, very important, and family. You can tell a lot about somebody by the type of people they attract. They have a lot of weird friends, dishonest friends, stupid friends. That means they're probably some of those traits, because like attracts like. And that, by the way, is not just a superstitious thing. There's a great book by a top scientist called The H Factor of Personality, talking about how it's called assortive. In dating, it's called assortive mating or assortive matching in business. Similar, like Bill Gates hung out with Steve Ballmer. Okay, Steve Ballmer was one of the, number 2 or number 1 in math in America, and Bill Gates was number 2, and lo and behold, they became friends. So if you didn't know much about Bill Gates, but you knew he was friends with Steve Ballmer, and you knew Steve Ballmer was great at math, you probably could be like, well, birds of a feather flock together. So friends and family, okay? Number 3 thing for business risk. So you got to look at the people, not the business plan. You look at background check, their track record, ideally in business. Okay, ideally in business. I'm just going to give you a last really practical one. Give them my quiz, tailopez.com, and give them the advanced one, full quiz. And I've got some videos there how to interpret it. And this will tell you a lot about the person's individual personality, since we're focused on, them as a person as opposed to the business plan. You can still look at the business plan. I'm not saying, because of the page before, we just talked about what to look for, scalability and potential buyers and things like that. But tailopez.com/full quiz. And you basically want to look at their dark triad scores. You want those low. You want the areas of hexaco, like conscientiousness, to be high, and honesty to be high, organization and agreeableness to be high. So that's a great little tool that's free. Okay? Just tell them, hey, will you take this? Tell them you should take it first, by the way. Take this. And there you go. Okay. So lastly, when the dangers and what you need to know about investing in a what is human risk, right? So let's say you do all the background checks. Let's say it is a scalable business. They passed this, they've won in the past. You look, it's a scalable, there's potential buyer, You still have human risk. So how do you prevent human risk? Number 1, you kind of did this before. Do the criminal background check. But the next thing, I consider that more of a business risk. Human risk, what I mean by that is things that happen to everyday, ordinary humans. Like, number 1. By the way, on the background check, you can also look at bankruptcy and credit score. We talked about that. But get a life insurance policy on the main business partner or partners that at least protects you for the amount. If you put $100,000 in, ask them, can we get $100,000 life insurance policy on you? And you can do a really cheap one, like a 5 or 10 year term insurance policy. It literally, assuming they have good, decent health and they're under $60, it'll cost like $30 a month. If you put $100, you get $100,000 10-year policy on a 40-year-old in decent health for like $30, $40 a month. So get a simple, or if they already own life insurance, they can name you as what's called, is a little more complicated, but they can make it as like an irrevocable beneficiary. They can't change it, and you just get assigned, you have control. Let's say they have $1 million policy, they could just write you in as 10% if you did $100,000. Number 2, this is more rare that people think this through. Make sure they have a disability insurance policy, and there's more complex ones. You need to use an insurance broker. But with disability insurance, you can literally do a buyout plan so that if they're really disabled badly, that the insurance company gives you a big chunk of money.
like 50 grand. You might not get your whole 100 grand or your 10 grand or your million that you put in, but at least try to get a chunk of it so you hedge against. And so they have kind of buyout plans, you know. And that's pretty simple. And the third one, this is kind of common sense. Look at their health. You just look with your eyeballs. You know, there's somebody who worked for me, a maid, who has been housekeeper here. She died this week. And, you know, she was married and she just literally had a heart attack at like 35. And her husband, you know, she passed away. It's a sad story, but this can happen to all of us. And you can never predict by just looking at somebody completely. But if somebody's super overweight, it's a riskier investment. If somebody's smoking a ton, if you know they got drinking all the time, man, I look at that and I think there's no hard and fast rule, you know, oh, they got 2 pounds extra fat. That's not what I'm talking about. Common sense here. But don't forget that when you're investing in private businesses, to assess their health, their physical. Because the test that I did, that I gave you to give them on the other page, that will assess their mental health. But you need to look at that physical health, because I just read a statistic, 2 out of 3 Americans are either obese or overweight. So about 66%. That's huge. And 30-some% are morbid or obese, and some morbidly obese. So I think that's something to factor in. Of course, when you do the life insurance, they'll assess for that. So that's today's lesson. Remember, investing in private businesses, if you do it right, can make you very wealthy. The 2 people who invested in Facebook when it was early, when Mark Zuckerberg early, made the greatest choice they ever made financially in their life. But it's full of pitfalls. If you understand the 3 main ones that we talked about. So for your homework to complete, I want you just in this homework right below to just rewrite out the 3 main risks, and I gave 3 examples of how to hedge against each of them. So you'll need to write out 3 things, and under each of them 3 things. So it's a total of 9 subtopics and 3 main topics. Write out these 12 things so that it'll force you to, if you missed anything, you can rewind this video, go back and go through this lesson. Very critical lesson, okay? This will help you, and this will also help you you can use this on yourself if you're gonna start your own business. Pretend you're on the outside as an investor looking in on yourself, okay? So thanks so much, and I will see you after you complete that. We'll unlock the next lesson. Let's keep going. Stick with this stuff. I know sometimes, you know, it's a lot thrown at you, but the quicker you learn, the better, and a little more painful it'll feel, but no pain, no gain. That's physical and mental. So see you soon.